Okay, I get it. You don't want to talk. No, Dan, I'm not mad. I'm hungry. I've been talking to you so long, I didn't eat lunch. So I'm going to go get something to eat, and that'll give you an hour to decide whether you want to be on the right side of this or read about it like everybody else.
He was doing what? With you.
Why?
Why?
Rim, you needed money.
It's almost an embarrassment, sir, to hear this from you. You don't want to talk to me?
It's time, Robbie. It's time. They knew, and they let it happen. 2 kids. Okay? It could have been you. It could have been me. It could have been any of us. We gotta nail these scumbags. We gotta show people that nobody can get away with this. Not a priest or a cardinal or a freaking pope.
And I am the publisher of the Inquirer. As such, it's my duty, and I'll let you in on a little secret. It's also my pleasure to see to it that decent, hard-working people in this community aren't robbed blind by a pack of money-mad pirates.
We must not confuse dissent with disloyalty.
The person who sits here is but the most conspicuous member of a superb team of journalists. Writers, reporters, editors, producers, and none of that will change.
It must be nice to always believe you know better. To always think you're the smartest person in the room. That's awful.
And that's the way it is.
Good night, and good luck.
Hi once again, everybody. I'm Ed Berliner. Welcome into another edition of the Press Corps. This is real news, real reporters, and not only that, but trying to fight against the fake news on a daily basis. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's go ahead and begin. As we do this show live, we are less than 24 hours away from the inauguration of Joe Biden as President of the United States. Washington, D.C. and other state capitals are on edge, and frankly, they should be after the events of January the 6th. People are concerned to the point where the FBI and other governmental agencies are taking time to vet everybody who comes into contact with the inauguration. And that means the National Guard, the military, the media, everybody. But it is the National Guard being vetted that, quite frankly, has some lawmakers rather upset as to why anybody would dare question members of the National Guard. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is the one who right now is screaming. He is unhappy. He is also making threats about what will happen in the future with regard to his National Guard, because he feels as if his National Guard should not be vetted. No one should check into their backgrounds, and he finds it an insult. Now, from KTVT Television in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, and anchor Doug Dunbar.
Those who are in Washington, D.C. tonight describe the city as eerily quiet ahead of the inauguration. Streets are closed tonight, a lot of them. Approximately 20,000 plus National Guard troops now patrolling the city. Barricades and fencing are all set up, all for protection, of course, amid threats we're hearing about leading up to the inauguration. Another 5,000 troops set to arrive tomorrow, and all of them are going through enhanced screening because of concerns about a possible insider attack.
There were military people and police who took oaths to defend the Constitution and to protect and defend who didn't do it, who were in the insurrection. So it does concern me.
FBI agents we know are conducting the screening. They are looking for anyone with possible ties to extremist groups who could pose an internal threat. Despite their concerns, they have not found any issues with any Guard member. But Governor Greg Abbott says he's offended by what's happening to National Guard troops in Washington, D.C., commenting, in fact, on a Washington Post article about vetting Guard members for a possible insider attack. He says, quote, "No one should ever question the loyalty or professionalism of the Texas National Guard." He also points out that he authorized more than 1,000 to go to D.C. ahead of the inauguration from our state, and he warns that he'll never do it again if they are, in his words, disrespected like this.
Now, there has to be a question asked of Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Why is he so upset? What's wrong with basically double-checking, triple-checking, and doing whatever checks you need to of anybody who is close to the inauguration, especially considering what happened in the D.C. insurrection riots, where a number of the people who were there were both former and current members of the military and former current members of law enforcement. It would seem to be the smart thing to do. But then again, you have the governor stating that they are above reproach. There will never be any problems whatsoever. However, the governor is proven to be wrong, because around noontime today, the day before the inauguration itself, there come reports that 2 members of the National Guard, now they have not stated where these National Guard members are from, but we do know that 2 of them have been removed from the active duty in the inauguration simply because their backgrounds didn't check out. This now from CBS 17, WNCN TV in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina.
New at noon, 2 National Guard members were removed from security for the inauguration after they were found to have ties to fringe militia groups.
The FBI had been looking into this very possibility, and as the president-elect prepares to go to D.C. tonight, Skylar Henry reports on the latest threat as the White House prepares for the presidential transition.
President-elect Joe Biden heads to Washington, D.C. today to kick off inaugural events. CBS News has confirmed reports the FBI is investigating online chatter from far-right extremists connected to QAnon conspiracy theories about posing as National Guard members to get close to the inauguration. Amid threats of violence, security has been fortified for the inauguration to happen as planned.
It's as vulnerable as the government ever gets, but I think it's an important message to send.
Now let's think about this for a minute. The governor of Texas is angry. He's pissed off, as a matter of fact, that anybody would dare question members of the National Guard. Yet here we are, one day prior to the inauguration itself, with a city that is filled with members of the National Guard, and indeed they have found people who have ties to extremist groups. This is nothing new. There are indeed members of active law enforcement, members of active military, members of retired on both sides, who have been shown to be members of these white supremacist groups, these extremist groups. Would you not want to keep them away from the Capitol just in case anything happens? Of course you would. So we have to start asking ourselves why the governor is so upset about it, especially when you consider not only the fact that 2 members of the National Guard have been removed, but also there have been reports in Washington, D.C. about possible threats. Now, again, these are reports of possible threats. But in a situation like America went through on January the 6th, it would behoove everybody to check out every single possibility there is, because when it comes to disaster, you only get one shot at making sure it doesn't happen. This is Stephanie Ramirez from Fox 5 Television in Washington, D.C.
This information is coming from the Secretary of Army, who first interviewed with the Associated Press, discussing concerns about a potential threat coming from within. We know some of the people who stormed the Capitol have prior military experience. Now, Pentagon heads are saying it is routine for National Guard members to be vetted for major events, especially those involving the president. Even journalists have been vetted for major events and are being vetted for events like this. But given what happened at the Capitol and the massive security increase, there are 21,500 National Guard members on grounds today in D.C., and the sources I'm talking to are noting that the total number of troops requested for Wednesday, some 3 times the National Guard used for the last inauguration. So that's a lot more people to go through, and that's why the commander of the D.C. National Guard was interviewing today, saying that the FBI is vetting troops in addition to the Army and the Air Force vetting. Now, what's not immediately clear is what happens if vetting isn't completed in time, but it is important, again, to note that the Department of Defense's acting secretary said earlier today they don't actually have intelligence indicating an inside threat, but they're not leaving any stone unturned. Here's the D.C. National Guard commander on Fox News.
We can either do it or be second-guessed after the fact for not doing it. So in an abundance of caution, we want to make sure that we have the right people in this security bubble.
We can do it or be second-guessed. Is that not what happened the day of the Capitol insurrection, where the Capitol Police Department was then for days, weeks, and certainly for months will be questioning themselves, what didn't we do? What could we have done? What should we have done? They should have been better prepared. In this case, seeing as there has now been a warning, if you will, the members of the military, the members of the FBI, and others are simply not going to allow this to happen because, quite frankly, they have the chance to stop it. They have the chance to hold it back, which then brings us once again to the question, why then would Texas Governor Greg Abbott be so upset about simply looking at the background of members of the military? It doesn't seem to be a big deal, but to him it's a big deal. Here's something to consider. The state of Texas, and again, we're not just slamming away at the state of Texas, these are facts. The Lone Star State itself is fertile ground for hate crimes, for extremism, for white supremacy, and within the borders of Texas, those elements are growing. This is a report from KENS Television in San Antonio, Texas.
Hate crimes are growing in Texas, and now there's an effort to recruit people who will carry them out.
This week, the FBI's hate crime report shows incidents are at a 10-year high. The question is why.
Eyewitness News reporter Marvin Hurst takes a closer look at hate and solutions to shut it down.
The cries of hate get louder.
White supremacy's got to go!
The desire for supremacy grows. Extremists are no longer hiding.
Death to our enemies!
These groups have clearly seen that the current environment is ripe for their recruiting, and that they feel more comfortable being out in the open.
San Antonio's Mark Tobin is the Southwest Regional Director for the Anti-Defamation League. They have watched the deadly manifestation of hate in El Paso, and they've also monitored recruiting efforts like the recent neo-Nazi flyer showing up in Hollywood Park as hate groups seek tolerance.
It's the mainstreaming of their messages more than anything.
The ADL's Hate, Extremism, Anti-Semitism, and Terrorism, or heat map, documents 735 cases statewide. 3 are murders. San Antonio logs 12 incidents. Most are white supremacist propaganda cases. In fact, those hateful messages increased statewide this year by 44%.
If anti-Semitism, bigotry, and prejudice become something of the norm, then we're in real trouble.
Divided, Tobin says we have to educate against the behavior, address hatred on social media, increase reporting of these incidents to the FBI, get all public officials to denounce hate groups, and learn our personal responsibility to fight against the poison of prejudice.
We can never eliminate hate in its entirety, but hopefully we can keep it at a very low level
and reach a point of diversity and love. Marvin Hurst, KINS 5, Eyewitness News.
The unfortunate thing about Texas is it will not be kept to a low level, quite frankly, because it is growing in the state of Texas. The governor should know what's happening in his own state, and I'll bet that he does. I'll bet you he's seen the reports, I'll bet you he has seen the numbers, and I will bet you that everybody brings it to his attention every single night when something like this crosses the desk. This then looks at the fact that in the state of Texas, they are acquiring a wealth of information regarding the groups, the possible targets they might have, those who may indeed be making trouble, not only in Washington, D.C., but in Texas itself, which is why so many states, and every state right now, they remain on edge as we reach the inauguration. Here's a report from KVUE Television in Austin, Texas.
Head of the Texas Department of Public Safety says law enforcement is monitoring several groups that could pose a danger to that state capitol in the coming days. But the agency stands ready, they say. That's according to 3 state senators who attended a private security briefing earlier this week. Senior reporter Tony Plahetsky joins us live from our newsroom today with this story. Tony?
Hey, Brian, the head of DPS gave 2 briefings to state senators this week. Much of it was general security information, but he did give some specifics. Colonel McCraw says those groups range in size from 200 up to 600. They have a variety of political ideologies. The biggest concern is whether these groups could unify and come to Austin together, which could lead to a surge in law enforcement presence. This week, we have seen a major increase in the number of DPS troopers and the National Guard patrolling the Capitol. Colonel McCraw told senators that authorities are not aware of any specific threat to the Capitol or to any Texas lawmaker. In a statement, DPS says that they won't comment on specific plans they have to keep the Capitol safe, but they do continue to adjust operations as needed to maintain public order.
Now, there has to be a question. Where did all these groups come from? There are some people out there, and I guarantee you, who are watching the show right now, who will say, wait a minute, 10, 15, 20 years ago, we didn't see these kind of stories. These kind of groups were not out there. This has to be something new. In essence, that's wrong on a couple of different stages, because these groups are not really new. They've been around 5, 10, 15, 20 years. The thing about it is they operated in secrecy. They operated under the radar because we didn't have social media. We didn't have so many channels. We didn't have the clickbait media. We didn't have the biased media. We didn't have the legitimate press also reporting on them because they had to, because these groups had come from out of the woodwork and started to become dangerous. But one of the reasons why they have become dangerous, and the experts will tell you this time and time again, facts, again, speak loud, is because of the oxygen these groups are being given. They almost feel as if that what they're doing is right, it's proper. Some even would say it's God's work, but others would say it is what they are charged to do by the government of the United States. It is their responsibility, they believe, to be the ones to save America. And in many cases, all they're doing is they're breaking the law and creating another scurrilous round of terror that will kill people. And frankly, many of them don't care if they do kill people, because that, again, is their point. We are charged to save America. We are charged to, and again, this only comes up because it's a good line, we are charged to make America great again, which leads us then to the President of the United States and the Proud Boys. It's fair to say that prior to October of 2020, very few people, and certainly many in the audience, had not heard of the Proud Boys. They were a very low-lying white supremacist group. But it was in October of 2020 at the presidential debate where Donald Trump breathed oxygen into the Proud Boys. And while we cannot blame Donald Trump for everything that happened, that would be irresponsible and it would be incorrect, it is fair to say that what he did the night of that debate gave, if you will, comfort to those who believed that they were doing the will, not just of the president, but of the United States. Here's a report from Lindsay Davis on ABC's Good Morning America.
This morning, there is growing concern over white supremacy in this country after that stunning moment at the first presidential debate.
Who would you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by.
The president failing to denounce white supremacists and right-wing militias in front of 73 million viewers, instead telling a far-right group to, quote, stand by. That moment certainly caught the attention of the Proud Boys founder, who was podcasting the debate live. Now that far-right group is under the microscope.
Trump 2020!
The Proud Boys, who describe themselves as a Western chauvinist group, is a growing presence at rallies, some armed with guns, staging a counter-demonstration to a Black Lives Matter protest in Portland on Saturday. The group has also appeared alongside other extremist groups at gatherings like the deadly 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. Their leaders say they are not white supremacists, but according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, the group is known for misogynistic and anti-Muslim rhetoric and has made allies of white supremacists and attracts some openly racist and violent people.
They see the left and anti-fascists as their predominant enemies. The Proud Boys really see themselves as acting on behalf of Trump and acting hand in hand with law enforcement.
The Southern Poverty Law Center says that in 2019, they counted 44 different Proud Boys chapters across the country, and that they were kicked off of Facebook in late 2018 because of their history of violence. Frank Mink, a former white supremacist, now anti-racism activist, says the kind of recognition Proud Boys got from the president only emboldens them.
It emboldens them, and it emboldens their leadership. They're going to keep doing what they're doing.
And with the election approaching, there are fears that the Proud Boys and other far-right groups will mobilize.
We have already seen them signal that they plan to monitor the polls or to be active on election day. You know, Trump has long talked about law and order, the need for law and order. And increasingly, groups like the Proud Boys and militias are seeing it as their duty to go out and impose law and order.
Elizabeth Newman, a former assistant DHS secretary in charge of counterterrorism who resigned in April, says that the president's words are creating conditions for domestic extremism to flourish.
For 3.5 years, you had people inside the government begging the White House to take this issue up, and they were silenced. I've come to the conclusion that's because he didn't want to do anything about white nationalism, because he views those folks as his supporters.
Violent hate crimes have actually increased since President Trump took office. Starting in 2016, they've actually steadily grown year after year. In 2018, the FBI said that they actually investigated more than 4,500 hate crimes.
Their duty, they believe, is to enforce law and order. And there comes to what we spoke about at the front of the show. And that involves those who are part of these extremist groups, these white nationalist groups, these racist hate groups that feed on the violence. It is indeed those who understand what law and order is, in some ways, because the facts have shown time and time again that a number of members, and not all, it is in many ways a very small amount, but it is still a significant amount of those who belong to such groups are former members of the military who know how to use a weapon, who know basic tactics, who know combat tactics, who are also either current or past members of law enforcement who also understand weapons, understand tactics, understand how to work in an urban setting. That is one of the biggest issues that continues to be overlooked by many when it comes to why do we vet National Guardsmen? Why do we vet members of the media? Why do we vet anybody when it comes to an event such as the inauguration? We do it because there are those people who, frankly, are willing to use their training in order to disrupt any event whatsoever, and in order to, what they believe, to defend the Constitution and to make America great. It simply isn't so. These are the addled individuals in America who believe that what they have been given is a righteous cause. As I mentioned, there are the facts, and all you have to do is look them up at any time and find out the different reports from different organizations, different non-biased organizations, if you will, who will tell you that these are the facts. The infiltration of the police department and the military by extremists, white supremacists, hate groups is growing exponentially every single day. Christopher Goldsmith was part of Iraqi freedom in the U.S. Army. He is an American veteran who served his country with pride. He is now the leader of the nonprofit group High Ground Veterans Advocacy. On the PBS show Amanpour and Company, this discussion came up with regard to those who are involved in these different groups and where they came from. This was in October of 2020, and the voice you will hear is the host, Hari Srinivasan.
Why do you think that active duty members of the military and veterans and law enforcement are being targeted by these white supremacy groups?
White supremacy groups and foreign disinformation campaigns target service members, veterans, and people in our community because we're seen as community leaders. Graphica, an organization that the Senate Intelligence Committee has relied on to review disinformation campaigns, found that service members and veterans are looked at as community leaders. Service members and veterans are more likely to vote. They're more likely to have leadership positions within the community, whether that's helping run a scouts troop or being firefighters or running for office. Because we are influencers in the pre-social media sense, we're an economically efficient target for these folks. And if a white supremacist can convince a veteran of their racist, xenophobic ideology, that veteran might bring his group of friends along with him, might bring his family along with him. And sadly, in my research, that's what I've seen. The radicalization of individual service members and veterans has had a negative influence on their immediate community, their family, their social circles.
How much of this philosophy is permeating law enforcement and active military, active law enforcement and active military today?
Military Times recently did a poll, and they've done this poll several years in a row, and their findings have been disturbing. And that's that the biggest threat, according to current service members, is white supremacy in the United States. Current service members see this for what it is. And that's because there are bases and places where white supremacy is thriving. I was stationed at Fort Stewart, Georgia. I had never seen a Confederate flag or a Nazi flag in real life until I was stationed in Georgia. Now, that's not to say that everyone in Georgia is a racist, but those people have a stronghold down there. And it is something that is growing. The Proud Boys, that we know of, thanks to President Trump promoting them, they're strong here in the New York metro area where I live.
What we need to make sure we do in a factual sense is not generalize. And again, as I said earlier, not everybody who's been in law enforcement of any sort, or in the military of any sort, or in any military faction is a problem, is a racist, is an extremist. Come on, that's ridiculous. Again, that is a generalization, and that's a leap that doesn't need to be taken, because the high amount, the greater percentage of those who serve in these capacities are indeed those who serve and protect. But there is the faction that does not, and they need to be rooted out. They need to be found. They need to be, if it comes down to a vetting, where you're sending them to Washington, D.C., and suddenly the day before the inauguration, you find 2 people who have ties to extremist groups, you pull them out. You find out more. And if you have to, you remove them from duty. You take them out of their cushy VA benefits, if you will. You arrest them. You throw them in jail if indeed they do commit a crime. You remove the guns and the weapons from them that they are given legally as members of law enforcement. There has to be repercussions. There has to be accountability, and there has to be responsibility. The question then is, how do we find out? We do by doing these sort of background checks. We do to find out. We try to uncover them before they create a disaster, as they did during the insurrection riots at Washington, D.C. It is a fact that a number of the people who were arrested at that event were members of a police department, were members of the military, were lawmakers, elected officials who reveled with glee at their effect of taking over the nation's capital and ransacking the House of the People. These are the people that need to be uncovered, found, and removed from a position, not temporarily, but permanently. And we need to pay greater attention to it now than ever before, because these groups have been given deadly oxygen. Let's move on. Something else when it comes down to removing someone from a position immediately because something has been discovered in their past. Let's turn to sports. The New York Mets had hired Jared Porter. He was their new general manager, and he was to set a new course for the Mets at a time when a new ownership was setting that new course, a time when Mets fans need to, quite frankly, have some sort of optimism because they haven't had any for a long, long time. So here they have a new general manager until today. Because it turns out that Jared Porter, when he was with the Chicago Cubs, spent a lot of his time using his smartphone and sending pictures to a female reporter. These were not pictures of him sitting behind his desk. Well, okay, maybe in essence they were taken behind his desk, but it still is pretty stupid that an adult doesn't understand the ramifications of sending these kinds of pictures over a smartphone. Because Jared Porter, see ya! You don't have to worry about having a job in Major League Baseball no more.
Stephen Cohen tweeted this out as the new owner of the Mets. It was really important that he took responsibility for this, that he took action quickly and swiftly on this Jared Porter case. He tweeted out, "We have terminated Jared Porter this morning. In my initial press conference, I spoke about the importance of integrity, and I meant it. There should be zero tolerance for this type of behavior." Porter has only been the Mets GM since December 13th. But this morning, he is facing a scandal that is clearly a career-ending event.
I want to thank Steve Cohen and
Mets general manager Jared Porter caught sending unsolicited, explicit texts and photos to a female reporter in 2016, according to ESPN. The network published a damning digital trail of evidence overnight online, documenting more than 60 unanswered texts and photos Porter allegedly sent while working for the Chicago Cubs. Porter reportedly made multiple unanswered requests for drinks and hotel meetups, sending messages saying, quote, "You're so pretty. Do you have a boyfriend yet? Am I annoying you? Why won't you answer me, beautiful?" And, after sending a lewd photo of himself, "Are you there? Mad at me?" The woman, a foreign correspondent, had moved to the U.S. to cover baseball and briefly met Porter in 2016. She says she never reported what happened to the Cubs for fear of repercussions. The organization told ESPN it was never aware of the incidents and plans to investigate. Yesterday, when reached by ESPN, Porter acknowledged texting the reporter and said the explicit photos were not of himself and were, quote, "kinda like joke stock images." In a statement, Mets president Sandy Alderson said he was just made aware of the allegations yesterday and that Porter acknowledged his, quote, serious error in judgment, adding, "The Mets take these matters seriously, expect professional and ethical behavior from all of our employees, and certainly do not condone the conduct."
And again, taking it so seriously that the owner, Stephen Cohen, fired Jared Porter just minutes ago. He's getting so many positive comments from Mets fans on Twitter, hundreds of responses thanking him for doing the appropriate thing, taking swift action. One of the tweets, very succinct, says, "Well done, Steve, signed women." And I think that that is very appropriate given this situation. Some are questioning why ESPN didn't report this earlier since they knew about the allegations back in 2016 and 2017. ESPN said they did not publish anything because the woman asked for them not to, and she had kept silent and still remains anonymous because Porter had been in a position of power.
That was Katie Corrado from WPIX-TV in New York. Let's unpack for a moment, if we will, here. A position of power, and that is indeed the reason why a lot of this happened. Not only Jared Porter, but so many others, male or female, believe that they have a position of power and they are allowed to get away with certain things. Well, you're not. And also, let's say this as well. How incredibly arrogant and stupid do you have to be? Now look, my granny told me never to use the word stupid. She said it was not right. You never call anybody stupid because it was unkind. I think even my sainted granny would have an okay here. How can you be so stupid to know that pictures you're taking, oh, and by the way, they may just be stock images. So let's see if I get this right then. Stock images of a penis are better than real images of yours? Somebody got to explain that one to me, and someone got to explain that to Jared Porter pretty quick. But how can you be so stupid not to think that something you send on a phone is going to be recorded by somebody else, and guess what? It's going to be kept by somebody else. It is a position of power and authority many times that we see these actions happen in. You can go back to Harvey Weinstein and so many others. It's that position of strength that they have and the belief that they have power over you, over somebody else, and they can get away with it. No, you can't get away with it anymore, or at least you shouldn't be able to get away with it, which then comes down to ESPN. ESPN knew about this in 2016 and 2017. We have to give them the factual benefit of the doubt. If indeed they did not release this story, because the woman involved herself said, please don't do this. If they acquiesce to her wishes, that is laudable. That's a bravo, if you will, because they are trying to protect someone instead of just getting it out for a salacious story. If indeed, though, they kept it back, the information that is, because they have a fat contract with Major League Baseball and didn't want to be a problem, that's something else. But that's mere speculation on my part. See? There's one of the things you have to do. Separate fact from opinion and speculation. The fact is this. Jared Porter will never work in Major League Baseball again. He really won't work in a lot of other places again for the rest of his life because this is always going to come back to haunt him. I don't want to say that he's going to be out flipping burgers because I'll tell you what, there's a lot of really good people who work hard flipping burgers and a lot of people who do other tasks as well. You have to wonder what's going to be the next position for Jared Porter. Photographer, maybe? Could be. He's got experience in a certain type of photography, and it just may fit. Well, so to speak. And it could put him on the straight and narrow, so to speak. And it could give him a hard look at his... No. Let's not go there, okay? That's even... We've gone too far already. But it's the sheer stupidity of social media. An adult male who does this, come on, people. Don't be so foolish, so stupid, so arrogant, so ridiculously naive. But then again, don't worry about it. It will happen again. It happened here, and it will happen again. Let's close out the press score today talking about the press itself. Those of you know that I call the press, I put them in two columns. I call it legitimate press and clickbait media. Legitimate press are those who actually go out, look for stories, base it on facts. These are the ones who don't deal in hyperbole and opinion. Then you have the clickbait media, when all they really do is opinion, propaganda, real fake news, disinformation, misinformation. And why do they do it? Because they make money. Because you and so many others, and let's be honest, we've all done it. Everybody's clicked on a story that we know is absolutely ridiculous, but we do it. Why? I don't know. Maybe it might be true. Maybe we've just got to check it out. We all do it. And this then comes down to Donald Trump. As the president leaves the White House for the final time, there's a lot of media outlets who have made a tremendous amount of money on Donald Trump. None more so than Fox News, because Fox News fed the Republican right, the people who were righter than Republicans, the people who were far right, and made a lot of money off it with great ratings. But again, there is that division, if you will, real news versus opinion. If you look at what Fox News does on a news basis, when they do their rare newscasts within the show, pretty solid. Now the reporters bend every now and then, and they go to hyperbole and they stretch a little bit, and the anchors certainly are there to make it all seem like it's a show and it's entertainment, but they don't do a bad job. The best news is still done by CBS, NBC, and ABC News on their weeknightly newscasts. Well, also on weekends as well, because it's all news. See, it's only a half an hour. You don't have time to dive into all the nonsense and all the garbage. You have to deal in the facts. But Fox and so many others have made a habit and made a lot of money out of not dealing in facts, in dealing with things that we know are propaganda, misinformation, disinformation, and the people who work at Fox, and I can tell you this by speaking to them personally, they know it as well. But a lot of them have a job, and they don't want to lose their job. And that's why they stay silent. It was in 2019 where Neil Cavuto of Fox, August of 2019, where Cavuto had a commentary. And at the time watching it, it raised a tremendous amount of eyebrows among those who were Fox followers because they could not figure out how Neil Cavuto could be saying such things about Donald Trump and still keep his job. But if you listen, and listen closely, Neil Cavuto, in this sense, and it works to revisit it, was indeed giving us the facts.
There are no grays, no middle ground. You're either all in or you're just out. Loyal on everything or not to be trusted on anything, which could explain the president himself this week bashing Fox News yet again, urging his supporters to stop watching the channel, to quote tweet, "Fox isn't working for us anymore." Well, first of all, Mr. President, we don't work for you. I don't work for you. My job is to cover you, not fawn over you or rip you, just report on you, to call balls and strikes on you. My job, Mr. President, our job here is to keep the scores, not settle scores. Now, in my case, to report the economic numbers when they're good and when they're bad, when the markets are soaring and when they're tumbling, when trade talks look like they're coming together and when they look like they're falling apart. It is called being fair and balanced, Mr. President, yet it is fair to say you're not a fan when that balance includes stuff you don't like to hear or facts you don't like to have questioned. You're only human. I get that. Who likes to be corrected? But you are the president. It comes with the job, just like checking what you say and do comes with my job. After all, I'm not the one who said tariffs are a wonderful thing. You are. Just like I'm not the one who said Mexico would pay for the wall. You did. Just like I'm not the one who claimed that Russia didn't meddle in the 2016 election. You did. Now, I'm sorry you don't like these facts being brought up, but they are not fake because I did. What would be fake is if I never did. If I ignored all the times you said you loved your old Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, until you didn't. Had no plans to dump your Homeland Security Secretary until you did. Called Chinese President Xi Jinping an enemy just last week and a great leader this week. Sometimes you don't even wait that long. Last week, you expressed an appetite for background checks before arguing just hours later our background checks are already strong. These aren't fake items. They're real items, and you really said them. Just like you never paid to silence a porn star until it turns out you did. Never ordered your former White House counsel Don McGahn to fire Bob Mueller until we learned you tried. Fake is when it's wrong, Mr. President, not when it's unpleasant. Just like it isn't and wasn't fake when you said the Access Hollywood tape wasn't real when it was, or that you inherited a depression from Barack Obama when you didn't, or that you ripped quantitative easing when he was president, but are furious the Federal Reserve isn't doing the same for you now that you're president. You're entitled to your point of view, Mr. President, but you're not entitled to your own set of facts. Now, we can argue over whether you ever wanted to buy Greenland or disrupt hurricanes with nuclear weapons, but where seeds are planted, doubts are sown. You're right to say the media isn't fair to you, that they're more inclined to report the bad than anything good about you. So it is no surprise you're frustrated that more aren't in line with you and that everyone at Fox might not be in lockstep with you. You might even think that those who are work for you. They don't. I don't. Hard as it is to fathom, Mr. President, just because you're the leader of the free world doesn't entitle you to a free pass. Unfortunately, just a free press.
In case you're wondering and you haven't caught up, Neil Cavuto still works for Fox, although some felt that after that in 2019 he would be fired immediately. Let's talk facts here. There's no doubt that his bosses knew he was going to do that commentary. It was vetted, it was checked, and they knew exactly what he was going to say. This wasn't a surprise, this wasn't a shock. But Cavuto is right in some ways. The people at Fox don't work for Donald Trump, but Fox in many ways does, because they have completely taken whatever the White House has handed them over the last 4 years, and they have turned it into fact, at least their version of facts. They're not alone in this. So have others such as Breitbart, PJ Media, OANN, and the minuscule Newsmax. All of these various channels continue to believe that they can make a dent in Fox because they will follow the president, when in essence, they won't. Fox has got a massive audience, a tremendous war chest, and all these various little toadies crawling around at the bottom will all get their 1% or 2%, and they will foster exactly what they want you to believe because they also have been part of the disinformation and misinformation campaign that has taken over the United States clickbait media for at least 4 years. Now, granted, let's be factual again. There are members of the legitimate press who push along a lot of this fertilizer, and sometimes even they go over the edge. But again, it's a difference between news and opinion. There used to be a time when a newscaster, such as myself, if you came out and were having a newscast and you said something of an opinion, it had to be labeled as opinion. There was a graphic underneath which would say opinion, commentary. That doesn't happen anymore. So therefore, it is up to you, the individual, to decide whether you're being given fact or commentary and opinion. How do you do that? You listen to more than one outlet. You don't listen to Fox. You don't listen to CNN. You don't listen just to MSNBC. You don't just listen to me. You listen and you read others. You make a qualitative judgment. You then get all the information and you decide to do a little research, which is immensely possible now with what is called the internet. It's this thing, and it's this thing called DuckDuckGo, Google, Yahoo, whatever you want to use, where you can find anything about anything. And it is then that you can make a real judgment on what is fact and what is opinion. Can we trust Fox going forward or any of these other entities? Can we believe they will actually be fair and balanced? Of course not. Why should they? They make millions of dollars. They get vacation homes in Maui. They get trips everywhere. They bank the money and they roll it in. Just because a couple of sponsors wind up walking away from Fox or a few people say, I'm not going to watch it anymore, it doesn't make a difference. They don't care. They're making their money. And that's what they do here. They make the money and they use you as that reason to make it. Look, there used to be a time when television news was just that. It was a news division. Then entertainment divisions, management got a hold of it and said, we need to make more money here because it's too expensive to cover the news. So what did they do? They created something called infotainment, which is a mix of information and entertainment. And then what did it become? Shows that you see now on every one of the cable networks. Opinion shows at night. They're not held to judgment. They don't have to give you the facts. All they have to give you is their opinion. And they believe that you will accept it as fact. That's why we do this show, because it is based on real reporters, real news, and opinion based on real fact. Granted, I opine, but I'm going to be quite upfront and tell you that when it is my opinion, I will. Fox is never going to be fair and balanced. They will be fair and balanced to a point that it serves their checkbook. So will CNN, so will MSNBC, so will so many others. But it's that balance. It's how far they go that is the real issue. Because if you look at it and you balance it, some of them will go all the way over here, and some of them will just take a little bit here and there. It's like the owner of a network once told me, he said, we're going to be right-wing, but just a little right-wing, when it turns out, in essence, he took the network and went full-blown to the right to the point of basically feeding every conspiracy theory he possibly could. It's the way it is, everybody. Just learn. Spend a little time. Find out where the reality is. Listen to different opinions and different pieces of news and make a qualitative judgment without just being fed by one. Because if you watch one channel, if you watch one individual, if you get your news from one source, you're a sucker. And quite frankly, that's what a lot of these networks and organizations want. They want you to be a sucker because it means you're going to keep coming back. They can feed you as much excrement as they possibly can, and you'll believe it. Look for the truth. Question everything. Dig it out. It's what we have the ability to do and what you have the ability to do as well. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Stay safe. Don't forget, you can catch all of our shows, Man in the Arena, Sports Pulse, and The Press Corps by going to welcometothearena.com. You can catch us on podcast. You'll find out here momentarily how to get every piece of information you can. And please subscribe to our channel and be a part of the fact that we do cover real news, real reporters, and fight the fake news every day. I'm Ed Berliner. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Stay safe and take care of everybody. Until next time, rock on, true believers. Stay in touch with the Press Corps on social media at Berliner Speaks on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And a reminder, all live shows debut on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, every episode is available at thepresscorpsrealnews.com, and all live shows debut on edberlinerlive.com. Talk business. Join me on LinkedIn by searching out Ed Berliner. And when it comes to podcasts, the Press Corps is available on every major audio podcast platform, including iTunes, iHeart Podcast, Spotify, and TuneIn Radio. The Press Corps is a copyrighted production of Entourage Management, LLC, and Entourage Media. It may not be used in any form without the expressed written permission of these entities and/or their legal representatives.